Kent Police, what's the emergency?
There's basically a bunch of guys that just broke into my house.
A bunch of guys doing what, sorry?
Broke into my house.
Oh, right, okay. How long ago did this happen?
Just a minute ago, I literally legged it.
Right, okay, bear with me. I won't be a moment. What's your postcode, please? And the full address? Okay, what's your name, please?
George Knights.
Right, bear with me then, George. I'm just going to get this sent over for attendance. Okay, I won't be a moment.
Okay.
How many people were there?
I don't know, a bunch of them.
Yo, what's going on, people? It's your boy Huncho, back at you again with another video. And so for this next one, we've got to head over to Rochester, where we're looking into a case that's heavily influenced by the TV show Breaking Bad. If for whatever reason you've never seen Breaking Bad before, it follows the story of Walter White and Jesse Pinkman, who go on to become meth dealers in order to make money for Walter's family after being diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. In episode 2 of season 1, titled Cats in the Bag, we see that the pair have gone on to murder a rival drug dealer by the name of Crazy 8, and quick thinking leads them to disposing the body in a hydrofluoric acid bath, and the rest is history. But let's just remember that this is a TV show. Since then, there's been more than a handful of incidents in the news where people have gone on to replicate this, but to no surprise, it hasn't worked. Here on the channel, we even looked into the case of Stefano Brizzi, who had killed a Metropolitan police officer, chopped him up, ate him, and tried to give him an acid bath. But out of the majority of cases I've looked over that have been Breaking Bad inspired, if you want to put it that way, I'd say today's story is probably the closest thing to a Breaking Bad storyline than we've ever seen before. In late 2019, then 18-year-old George Knight would meet a local drug dealer by the name of Stephen Chapman, more known by his nickname Ginge, to purchase drugs off him. In the weeks and months that followed that initial meeting, the pair would continue to meet up for drug deals in various places, such as Maidstone, Chatham or Rochester. According to George, in these following months, he had become a dealer for Stephen. In these meetings that they had with each other, George would go on to say that Stephen would brag about the connections that he had with dangerous people and would also brag about specific crimes that he had committed. But if we look at how this case goes, we can easily see through George's lies. Again, according to George's account, which I personally don't believe, he would go on to say that in the summer of 2020, so roughly 6 months or so after the pair had initially met, he told Stephen that he didn't want to sell cocaine for him anymore, and Stephen told him that wasn't going to be an option. He goes on to then claim that an enforcer had been sent to his home because he had purchased cocaine from someone in Cornwall. Yes, Cornwall. And according to George, this person in Cornwall was connected with Stephen, so because of this, an enforcer had been sent to his home. When this enforcer arrives at George's home, it's now apparently put to him that he should start to think about selling crack cocaine and heroin, stepping away from the powdered cocaine trade. Going off George's account, nothing comes from this situation for a while, but around 2 weeks before the date where this specific story takes place, it's been said that this enforcer had came around once again after George tried to buy more cocaine from Stephen, and this time he was punched in the stomach after he tried to explain that he wanted to trade stocks instead of being involved in the drugs trade. It was then this enforcer tried to strangle George, but George goes on to say that he shouted at him, and then this enforcer leaves. Yeah, I know, such a believable story. What should be noted though is that George was in fact an actual drug dealer who even had a pill press machine, which was found at his father's home. Of course, he lived with his father as well. For a period of time, he claims he had attempted but failed to synthesize Adderall before ordering powder on the dark web, which he then pressed into tablets with his pill press in order to sell them. He would also later go on to repeat his story about saving up money from the drugs to start trading in stocks, and in fact he had around £25,000 in cash saved, which would go on to be seized by police, but we'll get into that a little bit later. It's also believed he sold steroids and various narcotics, including amphetamine, so now you see the first Breaking Bad reference, of course, because he's a drug dealer. But fast forward in the timeline a little to where this story takes place, and on the 23rd of October 2020, Stephen would send his pregnant partner Rebecca Leader a WhatsApp message at around 8:30 PM saying that he was going to meet someone quick on Delse Road in Rochester, and this message was accompanied by a picture of George. Then a following message is sent that says, quote, "I won't be long, I love you." But little did Rebecca know this would be the last time she would ever hear of Stephen. At around 8:50 p.m, various messages and calls were made to Stephen, but to no surprise he never answered. So what happened in those 20 minutes at this drugs meeting, which has now seen Stephen not go on to answer any calls or any messages? Well, we'll never truly know what happened, but what we can say for certain is that once arriving at the address, George would at some point grab his dad's Royal Marine Commando knife, which had been placed with his dad's beret on the top of the drawers, and plunges it with force into the right side of Stephen's head, just above and behind the ear, going on to kill him. A pathologist would later come out to say, quote, "Severe force had to be used to inflict a wound like what had been found on Stephen." But we did say this story was inspired by the TV show Breaking Bad, and in similar circumstances to Walter White and Jesse Pinkman, putting a drug dealer in an acid bath to get rid of his body, that's exactly what George tried to do. After the attack had took place, he was captured on CCTV stealing a neighbour's wheelie bin. He fills the wheelie bin up with 12 bottles of drain cleaner, which had a 91% sulfuric acid content, and then throws Stephen in it head first in the hopes that over the following days, Stephen would slowly turn into nothing. But the savagery didn't stop there, because without a care in the world, George would head over to a party where he took drugs, had a good time, and went on to brag about this murder at this party. He even went back home to video Stephen's lifeless body in this acid bath just to show people. In a video that hasn't been put out by the media, he's even quoted as saying, "I'll play this to all my new friends in jail," in reference to that video of Stephen floating dead in an acid bath. But as the minutes turned into hours, Stephen's partner Rebecca, who was expecting him to be back within 20 minutes or so, was now panicked and had started to call family, friends and locals to try and help locate Stephen. Eventually, Rebecca had managed to get hold of George, and a call was made between the pair. Here it was reported that George said he didn't know where he was, and that if Rebecca had managed to get hold of him, then let George know because he wanted to speak to him. It was then Rebecca had become convinced that Stephen had been picked up by police, and so she started to ring the local police stations, but of course he wasn't there. This was soon followed by a trip to Delse Road, and when she arrived there, the first clue as to where Stephen was would be right in front of her. Her car he had been driving was parked 3 doors down from George's address. A subsequent knock and shout on George's home would see no answer, and so she reported Stephen as a missing person. With George the last person to see Stephen, a phone call was made to him by police.
Hello, is this George?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Hello, George.
Okay.
PC from Medway Police Station.
Okay, sure.
Hello, mate. You said that you saw George last night. Can you just kind of tell me what... sorry, Stephen. Can you just tell me what happened?
Yeah, so I literally just saw him to pick up something from him. And I basically only saw him for a second. He got out of his car, and then came over to just behind the kebab place, and then basically I got it off him and went back to mine.
Right,
it was
okay.
It was basically some like Viagra stuff.
Okay. What's sorry, mate. We just need to grab a couple of details, because obviously we're trying to figure out who was the last person to see him stuff. What's your last name?
To be honest, like, I don't really want to get involved in this if it's like...
Unfortunately, George, someone's gone missing. We can't locate them. You're one of the last persons to see him. You are kind of involved. When it comes to missing people, it's not kind of like... It's not like with normal investigations where we can say, yeah, it's fine if you don't want to provide. This is someone's life who could potentially be at stake here.
Yeah, no, of course. Like, I know.
So we're not saying anything's.
Ginger.
We're not saying anything's going to happen. We just need to build a picture of where Stephen's gone, what's happened, and build up why he might have gone missing. You know, if he's just gone away to a hotel for a night, absolutely fine. But we need to figure out what happened prior to him going missing.
Yeah, I mean, I literally left like. You know, I was there for a very short period of time, and I left, and I was at a party,
Right, we just
obviously...
We need to get a couple of details from you first, mate, because we need to put it up on the log. We're not saying anything's going to happen to you, and quite frankly, I don't really care about what package you was picking up or receiving at that point. I'm more concerned about Stephen's life at the minute.
Oh, no, yeah, of course. Like, I mean, I want to know what's happened, but it's all just a bit weird.
Yeah, that's why we're trying to figure out what's happened. So what's your last name, mate?
If I really have to give it, because you know, I know, like, I've not been like involved in wherever he's gone. Do you know what I mean?
No, and we're not. No one's saying that you've been involved, but everyone we've spoken to, we have to get their details because we've got to build a picture up of who the last people he's spoken to. We've got to understand what led up to him going missing. We're not accusing you of anything at all. As I said, I don't really care about that at the minute.
I just want you to know, like, obviously, like, he could have easily gone and just seen someone else.
Yeah, we know that, but obviously, as we said, George,
I don't know, like...
As I'm trying to say, mate, we need to. What we need to do is we need to build up a picture of what's happened. You're one of the last people to speak to. We might have some more questions later on. We're not saying you're in trouble. We just need your details.
No, I understand that. I'm just like making sure.
Yeah, no. Like
I'm not associated with something that's like him going missing. I know I kind of am, but like I don't want to be associated in a bad way, because I would never do that to him, obviously.
2 days after Stephen would go missing, family and friends, after knocking on George's door for the last time, would break into the property because they were concerned, and this forced George to flee the property, where he reported a burglary to police.
Kent Police, what's the emergency?
There's basically a bunch of guys that just broke into my house.
A bunch of guys doing what, sorry?
Broke into my house.
Oh, right, okay. How long ago did this happen?
Just a minute ago, I literally legged it.
Right, okay, bear with me. Wait a moment. What's your postcode, please?
ME1 2DG.
And the full address?
Dells Road.
Okay, what's your name, please?
George Knights.
Right, bear with me then, George. I'm just going to get this sent over for attendance. Okay, I won't be a moment.
Okay.
How many people were there?
I don't know, a bunch of them.
A bunch of them? Right, okay, I won't be a moment. Did they force their way into your house then?
You've got to go right now. You've got to go.
Did they force their way into the house? Hello? Do you know who these people are at all?
I don't know who they are, no.
You don't?
No, but there was a guy that came around the other day that was probably one of his boys.
That is probably what, so I'm struggling to hear you now because you're in the car. That is probably one of his boys?
Yeah, we got into an argument because he's like, he's always been fucking...
I really can't hear you at the moment because I'm on the hands-free.
It's just some guy that's like very aggressive, and he's just like, yeah, I guess it's one of them.
Right, okay, so what did you do? Just left the house as soon as they broke in?
What's that, sorry?
Did you leave the house as soon as they broke in?
Yeah, well, I was upstairs asleep, and I heard banging.
Yeah.
And then I looked out the window, and I could see them trying to break into the back door, so I just put my clothes on and legged out the front door.
When police arrived at the address, it was then the grim discovery was made of Stephen's body, severely corroded away, sitting in the wheelie bin in the conservatory, which had to eventually be removed by the fire brigade. A further search of the property showed that substantial quantities of Class A and Class B narcotics were found, along with that £25,000. George would initially be arrested on suspicion of drugs offences, but was later rearrested and charged with murder. George would go on to plead not guilty to the charges brought against him, and some key things to point out from the trial would be that it did seem as if George was completely obsessed with Breaking Bad. In a drug-fueled world of his own, it's believed that George had turned his dad's kitchen into a drugs lab when he wasn't around. He would binge watch Breaking Bad, and when trying to apply for a driving license, he even tried to use the name Walter White. In court, he would go on to admit to the jury that he borrowed the acid bath scene from Breaking Bad in order to dispose of Stephen's body, but ultimately claimed this was a case of self-defense after George had told him he wanted to stop selling drugs for him, which meant in turn Stephen was losing out on money. Talking of the moments leading up to the murder, George said that Stephen said he was strapped, and after feeling his life was at risk, he went upstairs to grab the money for the drugs, and he also grabbed his dad's dagger just to have on him in case anything went down. He then says a fight soon breaks out, and eventually George goes on to stab him to death, and you guys know what happens next. The jury seen right through his story though, and eventually he was found guilty after less than 6 hours of deliberation, but as of yet, he's yet to be sentenced over this case. But this case was an interesting one just from the simple fact that after all the evidence had mounted up against him, he still went in court and tried to claim that this was a situation of self-defense. And I think what's most shocking is the fact that he thought he would get away with it even after admitting that he did go on to dump him in this acid bath. But I think to make this story even more sad than it is, on the first day of trial, believe it or not, Stephen's girlfriend had actually gave birth to his child, and now Stephen won't even be able to meet his child. But I do want to take this time out just to say rest in peace to Stephen, and I do want to send my condolences over to his family, because it must be very hard for now Stephen's family to grow up without a father, because he did have other children as well, and of course again he'll never get to meet this child that was born on the first day of the trial. But let me know what you guys think of this down in the comment section below. Give the video a little like, and if you want the latest drill, street and music news out of the UK, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your boy Huncho, and I'm out.